Guilty or not guilty, that is the question that is in question. All of us can take our minds back to March of 2020, the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic. When cruising was taking place, when COVID was present, there was an outbreak on the Ruby Princess. Over 24 passengers eventually passed away, over 600 plus cases. There is a class action lawsuit in which lawyers say that Princess Cruise Line and Carnival Corporation should have known better. They should have done things differently. They should not have cruised. Carnival, of course, has arguments as well. We're going to share the details of this case with you and let you decide what you think should happen regarding this matter. Let's talk about cruising and cruise news right now on Island Time. A big happy Wednesday to all you Islanders. We're halfway through the week. I hope it's been a good one. Thank you so much for stopping by the show today. I am Derek, and it's time now that we drop our anchors at this midpoint in the week. We take some time, we relax in the islands together while we discuss cruising and cruise news. I first have to show you these pictures and video. The Carnival Ecstasy, of course, on her last farewell, her final farewell. She's in Cozumel, Mexico today, and that is only fitting because 30 plus years ago on her inaugural cruise, guess where she visited? Cozumel, Mexico. They are having so much fun on board. These pictures here, of course, are from fellow Islanders that are on our Facebook page. They're enjoying this experience. They also are sharing how beautiful and well-maintained the ship is, but she's in Cozumel today. They're going to wrap up that cruise on Friday, where the Ecstasy will say one final goodbye as she leaves for what we think is going to be the scrapyard. You Islanders know that we have a lot of fun with cruising and cruise news. These shows are positive, they're usually upbeat, but sometimes news in itself is negative. Sometimes it's hard or somewhat impossible to put a positive spin on something. This story that we're talking about today is one of those stories. It's one that I just have to share with you. I'm going to share the facts with you. That's what we do, of course, and I want your input. Before we share this story, I'm going to share this. Our hearts go out to those families and victims that are in discussion. The families and victims that this court case is about, who they're representing. Over 24 families lost someone in this story that we're talking about. 600 plus people contracted COVID, some of them maybe long-term COVID. And the first thing, of course, we're showing love. That's what we do. Island love to all those who this story impacts. Let's talk about this story. We knew this case was coming up here on the docket. We've been waiting for it, and they're hoping to have this case done within 4 weeks. But here's the argument. A lot of us can remember back, as I mentioned in the intro, to March of 2020. Embarkation day for the Ruby Princess was March the 8th of 2020. The cruise ship, of course, Ruby Princess, the cruise ship was headed back to Australia. What was set to be a fun cruise. COVID-19, of course, we knew about it then. We knew we had about 80,000 cases worldwide, which was a small number. You guys remember those days in 2020, 2021, when we had just in the United States alone over 100,000 cases a day. Worldwide, March of 2020, only 80,000 cases. We didn't know much about the virus and how it spread and how serious it was. And of course, we didn't know what it was going to become and how challenging 2020 and 2021 would be. We didn't know it. Cruising was still taking place. People were excited to cruise, ready to cruise, aware of the risk in cruising, but still decided to cruise. The facts of that March 8th sailing is this. 28 people on board that ship eventually passed away from COVID-19. 660 people tested positive. Of the 1,679 Australians on that cruise ship, 663 tested positive for COVID. There were 2,600 passengers on that cruise ship. And this case is taking place because lawyers think it's a class action lawsuit, but lawyers think that Princess Cruises, who's owned by Carnival Corporation, had negligence. Things should have been done that were not done. I'm going to share the claims with you now. These are the claims from lawyers. Their argument and claim involves whether Princess Cruises and Carnival Corporation breached the Australia customer law and breached its duty of care to passengers. Lawyers argue that there was not enough medical supplies, medical facilities, medical personnel, and PPE on board. They're saying Princess and Carnival, they weren't ready for this. They should have known what was going on, should have better equipment and staffing on board. Lawyers are also arguing in this case that there were other outbreaks on other ships. How did Princess not know that this was a risk? How did Carnival Corporation not know this was a risk? You have outbreaks other places. Why are you still cruising on March the 8th, which is, by the way, less than 2 weeks from when cruising officially shut down? Lawyers are also arguing that passengers were not protected during the cruise. There was no social distancing. Activities continued as they always had on Princess. The shows were the same. There was no social distancing. The capacity was the same level. There was nothing really that had changed regarding cruises. And all of these are valid arguments. All of these possibly are true. But the question here is, were these things done in negligence from Princess Cruises and Carnival Corporation? Were they done on purpose? Or did Carnival and Princess Cruises simply not know what they should be doing at that moment in time when those passengers were on board? Carnival, of course, has defenses of itself. They've shared some of those defenses. Carnival has said that first off, when a person decides to go on a cruise ship, they know some of the risk that's involved. That's in everyday cruising like we have right now, but that was especially the case in March of 2020, as we knew this pandemic was here, and that passengers, of course, can choose whether or not they feel that they are safe and they're in the capacity to cruise. As an individual, they could have canceled, they could have cruised. It's their decision. Of course, we signed that passenger contract as well. If you've never looked at it, look at it. There's a lot there. Carnival also argues, and they shared deck plans with the court to show that there were places. If you wanted to social distance, then you could go outside various venues, literally using deck plans of the ships saying you could go here and be safe. They reference the number of balconies on board. If you had a balcony room, of course, you could sit on your balcony and you would be okay. Carnival is arguing that. They're also arguing that there was no requirement at the time from the U.S. CDC or Australian government to screen passengers as they were on board the ship. There was no requirement to change the way cruising should take place. There were no protocols released by the Australian government, which is where this ship was headed. There's no requirements in place or suggestions on how you should change things from the United States government. We know that those things eventually came right? Every country started to say, the United States included, if you want to cruise, this is what it looks like. When the cruise restart took place and the CDC was governing cruises, Australia did the same thing. Cruising just recently returned to Australia. But each country said, this is what cruising will look like if you stop in our country. None of that was in place in March of 2020. We just didn't know yet that we needed that. That's Carnival's argument. Lastly, Carnival argues that there were no travel restrictions. There were not countries yet, March the 8th of 2020, that were saying, hey, don't come here. If you're leaving from this country, you can't go here. If you're leaving from there, if you've been there, you can't go there. It was not in place yet. Carnival has arguments, as does the class action lawyers. I see both sides' point of view. And the question is, were things done in negligence? Could Carnival and Princess have known better? Should they have known better? Should they have maximized this risk and shared this risk with others? Should they have included more doctors and personal staff? Did they try to get PPE and they couldn't? A lot of places were like that. And as you've watched this show today, I'm sure you've come to some of your own conclusions. I've shared the major details of this story. And I have to ask you, what do you think about this? What do you think about this class action lawsuit of cruisers who were affected? Over 24 people lost their lives, over 600 positive cases. But is there liability somewhere? Does it fall with Princess? Does it fall with Carnival? Or does it fall in a category of they couldn't be expected to deliver some of these things yet? It was too early. I ask you respectfully to think about these details and to share what you think in the comment section below. I know that when you look down there, there will probably be statements from people that you disagree with. And I'm asking that everyone post responsibly and respectfully. Share your comments. What can be done? Is there a middle ground? Maybe Carnival should have done some things they didn't do. Or maybe there's nothing they could do. That's their argument just about, is there's nothing they could have done. Post what you think in the comment section below. We will keep an eye, of course, on this case. It has major implications. There are hundreds of other cases from people who have situations like this where they got sick on board and they want to sue the cruise line. Of course, passenger contracts were much more strict. Protocols were in place when cruising restarted. But let's say that the ruling in this case goes in favor of the class action lawsuit and the passengers. There are other passengers ready and lined up, and lawyers ready and lined up to make the same arguments and say, hey, I'm ready to have a case as well. I have a case to present to a judge. Let us know what you think in the comment section below. Be respectful, be kind, and we can't wait to see what you have to say below. I'm going to ask you, Islanders, as well, if you're not an official Islander yet, please subscribe to the channel, ring that bell to receive notifications when we upload content. And if you enjoyed this story today, the show, and this community, of course, give us a thumbs up. We'll see you in the comment section below and tomorrow right here on Island Time.